And welcome back to Punchline, a very final episode of 2019. Still here with Jubilee Secretary General Raphael Tuju. Let's talk about the BBI. A section of the press are now reporting that ODM will push for a powerful Prime Minister's post with deputies. Does Jubilee have a common agenda in as far as what are bare minimums you would like to see out of the BBI process?
Well, very deliberately, we did not even present our proposals as to what it should be, because we think what is important is what is in the best interest of this country. Mm-hmm. The report is out there, and I think there are going to be a series of other meetings, mm-hmm. town hall meetings. Some experts, I'm sure, are going to be brought on board to try and reduce it into something that can go before Kenyans in a legal way, or things that can be dealt with administratively and so forth. I don't know exactly the end game. There's a special group which is dealing with that.
But arguably, as the largest political party appears in the country, surely you must have some proposals that you would like to see in terms of the governance structure.
It's very, very important that we kept some kind of public distance from it. It doesn't mean that we're not interested. And because anything I say, for example, as Secretary General of Jubilee Party, would almost seem as if that is the government position. Yet it could be just my point of view as Raphael Tuju. And that's why we've been very hesitant to just talk about it and make recommendations.
So no common party position on that?
For us, what I would say is common is that we want something which will make Kenya work. We want something that will ensure that we don't have the kind of boom-bust situations that we have faced in the past 20, 30 years, that an election is a do-or-die thing, winner takes it all kind of situation, divisive elections that make people cut each other with machetes, and making our country be very primitive in that respect.
You're going cautious on this because, that's the sticking point for the Deputy President and his supporters, that they feel that the creation of this Prime Minister post that is powerful with deputies is a tactic by the same Stop Ruto movement, as it were, to deny him presidency in 2022.
I don't know how that would deny anybody presidency.
A powerful presidency, at least.
Well, and in some respects, I always feel it's a pity that people are talking about powerful presidency, powerful prime minister. I think what we need is a good constitution, and when a good constitution is there, then this question of power play does not become a major factor.
But it leaves you as Mr. Nice Guy as a party, doesn't it? That these suggestions did not come from Jubilee. It was ODM that brought them in a consensus movement, when all along what at least this, if I would call it the Tanga Tanga movement, have been saying is that BBI was a process with a clear 2022 agenda in as far as who would lead the country. And now it appears, with reports like this, that that's going to play out at the public participation phase. So it was going to come either way, wasn't it?
Well, to some extent, I mean, the BBI do have some bearing in 2022. Why? Because we don't want to go through the path that we went through before. We don't want a situation that after every election, this country is split right in the middle. Look at, for example, what happened with swearing in, quote unquote, at Uhuru Park with Raila Odinga. Hundreds of thousands of people are there. Do you know what kind of thing can precipitate? If, for example, you told those people, let's march to State House, there would have been a bloodbath in this country. And as I told you, in the world today, we are number 170 out of just about 190 countries in terms of political stability. That affects foreign direct investment. When people are making decisions as to where they want to go and invest long term, those are things that investors think about.
Do you see BBI leading to a referendum before 2022? Is that something the party would be okay with?
Again, if you look at, sorry for going technical on this, but if you look at Section 16 of the Constitution, Article 255, 256, and 257, it states very clearly what aspects of our Constitution can be amended.
Right.
through Parliament,
Right.
and which ones can only be amended through a referendum. And so really, it is not what I, Raphael Tuju, or the Deputy President or the President would want to see. It is what is going to happen. We should be informed by the Constitution itself.
And that is true. There are the sections that would go to a referendum. But I'm saying as the debate is escalated and you end up, I suppose, with the final document of the BBI after they've gone around the country collecting views again, or whichever process that would take, do you think a referendum would be good for Kenya? And I ask this because many are saying now that BBI was about building bridges. If BBI ends up going back to a referendum, you'll be burning bridges again because referendums are divisive. Is that something that Kenya can handle before 2022 whilst you're still trying to find mechanisms of working together?
We should have a referendum if the amendments that the BBI wants us to go through, it reaches that threshold that the Constitution prescribes can only go through a referendum. So really, it is not a matter of our choices as individual Kenyans.
No, but
what
you're
we
concerned
prefer.
about stability. And President Kenyatta has been talking, a lot about that, he wants his legacy to be about uniting the country. And that's what BBI is supposed to do, unite the country. But we cannot run away from the fact that political processes, even constitutional processes such as those, can be very divisive. We've seen it before. We saw what it birthed in terms of Chungwa and was it Ndizi or whatever happened at the last referendum. And I'm just saying, as a party whose leadership has said our agenda now is cohesion, are you not concerned that a cohesion agenda could be compromised by such a process?
It could, depending on how it is played. But we cannot do anything which is illegal or which is unconstitutional, because the court will just call us to order.
All right. And let's talk about that cohesion. How exactly does the party, does the president intend to build that peace one-on-one with Kenyan communities? How does BBI arrive at that conclusion?
I think one of the things that you should appreciate with the BBI is that at least we are talking. At least it acknowledges we have a problem that we have to deal with. And indeed, if you look at the 9 items in the 9 agenda items in the
Right.
BBI report, 8 of them have to do with the challenges of management of our ethnic diversity. I mean, whether it is devolution, whether it is corruption, whether it is all the issues that are raised there. In one way or another, you can see the common thread of the challenge that is caused by our ethnic mobilization in the political arena. Even if you're talking about corruption, for example, what does ethnicity have to do with it? I was talking with a member of parliament recently who had to go and support another politician who was in court on a corruption case, not because he believed that that particular politician was innocent, but because, as he told me, back in his village, if he's not seen in court supporting one of their own, then he'll be in trouble during the electoral time, 2022.
And that is true, but if you could get to my question, which is, so what, and you're quite right about the 9-point agenda, it does focus on that, but in terms of what we saw from the report, and I've looked at it more than once, what would you say is a specific recommendation that actually fixes the antagonism? Is there one that jumps out to you that this is the solution to, or this is the way to work through our difficulties?
The one thing which is a common thread in 8 out of the 9 is the challenge of management of our ethnic diversity.
The solution, I'm asking now, what is the solution?
The solution is to address that. I mean, even when you're talking about issues like national ethos, I mean, which are our national ethos? Which is our nation, for example, if I may ask? Is my nation first and foremost a Luo, or is my nation Kenya? And in this respect, we have enough warriors for the ethnic nationalities, so to speak, right? But we have no warriors for Kenya. So So, and with that kind of competition, we have the challenge of exclusion. In fact, both those communities who may be viewed to be in government, say, for example, Kikuyus and Kalejins, if I may say what Kenyans talk about, their biggest fear is exclusion. What happens in a dispensation where they'll have nothing at all to do with the leadership in the government.
Let me put
now,
it to
those
you
who
this way,
are outside,
Honourable Tuju, in the interest of time, because what those who have been advocating and campaigning for the BBI have said is that if we have an expanded executive and more communities can be brought into the top leadership of the country, regardless of whether or not you won an election, then in that way people will see a reflection of themselves at the highest level of government, and it is assumed that that would help bring inclusion. I mean, is that a position, an argument that you advocate for? Do you see it that way?
It's a bit simplistic to put it in that way.
So which is the answer?
Let me just give an example. I'll give you an example. It's not an answer, but I'll give you an example. That's why we should be debating. And that's why I'm also very careful not to be prescriptive. I mean, take, for example, the issue, and fortunately this afternoon I was talking about gender inclusion and gender matters in government. Take, for example, this whole thing of proportionate representation, all right? In countries, for example, where they have managed to achieve gender parity or a little bit better gender representation in their governments, in members of parliament and so forth, are countries that have adopted proportionate representation in terms of their politics. And you'll find that in South Africa, you find that in Rwanda. That's why you have Rwanda has the best profile as far as gender inclusion is concerned. And this is the same with Norway, for example. In countries with the Westminster model, like what we have in the UK, there are issues of exclusion. You've had issues like, for example, in the UK, the Scottish wanting to leave, and they went through a referendum for this. There are issues with the Welsh, for example, because of that Westminster model. So we need to address even the model of democracy that we have. What the BBI does is that it invites us to be able to debate these issues. And I'm glad in the BBI, for example, they have talked in terms of a mixed system where you have first past the post mixed with proportional representation. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm being very technical.
Not at all. I don't think you're being technical at all, but I suppose many will read from that the fact that they expected BBI to come out with the answers. Now BBI has given them more questions than answers. But be that as it may, I want to quickly, as we wind up, focus on the Kenyan dream and the state of the nation. And a dream like no other was sold by Jubilee, that of really, it was a dream of inclusivity and of taking Kenyans to the next level. And there are many who are walking out of 2019, halfway through the last term of this current president, saying that dream is lost. What happened to our children having laptops? What happened to the stadia for our youth? What happened to prosperity for all and all of that? What do you tell Kenyans who feel disappointed, and particularly Jubilee supporters who feel disappointed with the government's performance so far, 7 years on? Well,
first of all these are aspirational, and we all have to aspire to try and achieve those things. And I'm not the spokesman for each ministry dealing with the specificities as far as some of those, aspirations are concerned. But I think one of the things that Kenyans should really appreciate that we are not getting enough credit for is we have relative peace. Let me tell you, just next door, some of the countries next door to us, they are settling their differences with tanks and guns. We are settling our differences by talking. During the State of the Nation address early this year, when the president was addressing Parliament, he was getting cheered by both opposition and the government side. This is unprecedented anywhere in Africa.
He was getting cheered, but we don't have jobs.
No, that's true, but a precedent for any economic growth, a precedent for any job creation is to have peace. And if without fixing the politics, there'll be no future.
Are you saying that the failure to deliver on the part of the Jubilee administration has been because of bad politics and not because of bad policy?
Well, it is unfair to say there's failure to deliver. Let me give you an example. This country, I can say without any risk of contradiction, is the first country in Africa to experience 100% transition from primary school to secondary education. This may look simple, but let me tell you, if there is anything that defines the difference between, say, for example, the Southeast Asia countries, the so-called tigers, they achieved in Korea transition from primary school to high school 40 years ago at over 90%. In this country, in some of the parts of the country, for example, where I come from, Rarieda, the transition was in the region of between 35 to 40. Now, this year, we achieved 100%. That's not a mean feat. And it is the first place in the whole of the African continent to achieve that.
So you're saying there have been some successes, let's conclude with
the only
one
thing is
concern,
that, of course, we succeed in one,
sir, which is, and I think it's the single thing that Jubilee has been faulted the most on, is how it deals with money, be it the question of corruption or economic policy. And the greatest criticism on economic policy that has failed to deliver the 1 million jobs that the president and the party promised has been this sort of trickle-down economics that doesn't work. Can you concede that there has been a fundamental flaw in economic policy and that Jubilee has failed to deliver that kind of prosperity for all that it promised?
Well, I must say that Kenyans are very impatient.
Kenyans are very patient?
Impatient.
Impatient?
And I can understand. If I don't have a job, I have no patience. I want a job.
7 years?
Now.
That 1 million jobs has never been reached.
Kenyans would want to have jobs like yesterday, and I agree with them. In fact, but you have to be a little bit more informed of some of the challenges we have. For example, this country has got one of the highest youth population bulge, not just in Africa, but in the whole world. All right? And that is a legacy of our past. There was a time when we had the highest rate of population increase in the whole world, in the 80s and the 90s. The chicken have come home to roost. We had the highest. In fact, I can even go further. A place like Kisii and Kiambu and Vihiga, they were at 6%. There's no precedent of that kind of population increase in the whole world unless there's been a war. So really, we are dealing with very, very big challenges in terms of the youth population bulge. Then, of course, there are certain factors that are way beyond us. For example, even the World Bank has given a warning of a recession, global recession. All right? So we should expect less in terms of foreign direct investment. We should expect to pay more for our petroleum products, for example. So our economy is directly connected to the rest of the world.
Can you not take responsibility for your own policy?
Well,
that we expected mega projects will lead to jobs, that it's taking too long, that people needed those jobs 7 years ago when they were voting you in. Can you not concede to the public that it's not about their impatience, that it has been a problem with policy, that there may be need to rethink policy?
We can say that, of course, we are not perfect. There are certain areas where we should have done better. There's an area of corruption in which we have serious challenges, and this is not something which only the Jubilee government has to do something about. Our judicial system has to do something about that as well. The president is now dealing with the issue of pending bills in a very detailed way so that there's more liquidity in the country. And I can say it's not easy. We have very, very major challenges like any country in the world has at the moment. I mean, if you go to South Africa, their airline is likely to be bought by Ethiopian Airways, for example. So economic challenges is a fact of life. We're trying our best. We want Kenyans to continue to support us, but nothing was going to happen unless we fixed our politics. Because as long as there were going to be demonstrations in the streets of Nairobi, as long as there was going to be ethnic strife, we would not have the peaceful environment that would encourage foreign direct investment to be able to make a difference in this country. And
that's our time with Jubilee Secretary General Raphael Tuju. Thank you very much for coming on the program. And we still want to wish you a blessed holiday season. And I mean, even with those projections from him on the economy, a good start to 2020. I'm Anne Kiguta. God bless you. Bye-bye.